Packers fans, stay up to date on all of your Packers news this season via our newsletter. You can sign up for the PackersNews.com and more Journal Sentinel newsletters by clicking on the link in the brief field of this video.
319. 319. Set. 319. Set.
Hello, Packers fans. Welcome into the Green 19 podcast from JS Online and PackersNews.com. I'm Kassidy Hill, joined as always by Ryan Wood, who is getting ready to start his summer break. Ryan, are you excited that you are now officially, almost as soon as we're done with this podcast, on summer break?
Yeah, I feel a little bit like a senior on the last day of school right now. It is the most wonderful time of the year. It's an important time. For me, it's about unplugging, disconnecting, getting rested for what's coming in late July. And we know that come late July, July 21st is quarterbacks, injured players, and rookies. They report. July 25th, the whole team reports. And July 26th will be the first day of practice. And they're off and running, and we'll see how long the season goes. But welcome to summer, Kassidy. It's great to be here.
It does. Feels like it was a long road. But the Packers did hold 2 practices this week as part of their mandatory minicamp. They had perfect attendance, kind of. Perfect attendance from those of them who they expected to be here. Matt LaFleur said that anyone who was not here was a quote-unquote excused absence. The only person that I think you and I noticed not here the 2 days during minicamp was Tavarius Moore, the safety.
Right.
And he had been here all through OTAs. He was here for the entire time of OTAs. So I don't think he was skipping out, as Matt LaFleur said, must have been an excused absence. But how vital is that to have everyone in the building, even if it's just for 2 non-padded practices?
It is. I thought it was very interesting how they set up the format of minicamp. They did finally, the very end of Wednesday's second practice, they got into some competitive 2-minute situations. But it was very much classroom football on the field. They just took the mental work and they put it on the field. It was a lot of walkthrough. Matt LaFleur said that from a conditioning standpoint, he feels like this team is far ahead of where it's been since he's been here the past few years. And we were talking, Kassidy, it makes sense, right? I mean, this is a very young team. What do we know about youth? 25-year-olds probably in better shape than 30-year-olds.
Your knees don't hurt as much in your 20s.
Yeah. And then you get 36 like me, and it's like, oh boy, you're just trying to get through the day. So this is a young team. And that makes sense that they're going to be better conditioned. I do think, though, that with a young team, what they might have for conditioning, you lack for experience. And so it was a show of confidence from Matt LaFleur, and we'll see how this pans out. But there was a show of confidence that they didn't go through a lot of situational work. There weren't a lot of competitive periods. Now, one part of that, they have not one but 2 joint practices coming up in training camp. They're going to be in Cincinnati, and then they have the New England Patriots coming to town. There's no question that's a lot of workload for a young team to be able to practice situational ball, and they're going to run. It's going to be an extensive training camp. So maybe Matt LaFleur said he didn't want to put anyone in a compromising situation from an injury standpoint. He feels pretty good about where this roster is. He didn't want to jeopardize that. And knowing that you're going to get a lot of work with joint practices, that could have influenced the decision to go with a lot of walkthrough, a lot of classroom work. But it was a pretty casual pace for the 2 days.
Yeah, I think on Wednesday they didn't go full speed one time. It was half speed, even in the 2-minute drills. Of course, the subject that everyone wants to know about is, how does Jordan Love look? Again, the caveat is there were no pads. He can't get hit. More than once, I saw Kingsley Enagbare just stand there in front of Jordan Love and wait for him to throw the ball because he couldn't touch him. That being said, this is not the time of year when you're looking for that from a quarterback. You're looking for accuracy. You're looking for decision making. Brian, I felt every time someone has asked that question, like, well, he's getting there. He's still young. What's important is that he's not getting flustered when he makes up or when he messes up, and he's remaining confident. What have you seen from Jordan Love throughout OTAs, but especially throughout these last 2 days of minicamp, where he is throwing against Jireh Alexander, who intercepted him to end his 2-minute drill on Wednesday? He is throwing against Rasul Douglas, Keyshawn Nixon, those guys.
Yeah, very little, because again, it weren't a lot of competitive periods. Jordan Love's very first team rep Wednesday, he threw an interception to Devondre Campbell in the flat, but it was a walkthrough. Mm-hmm. It's not a competitive drill. It's a walkthrough. So that's what we saw. We saw a lot of Jordan Love in walkthrough settings. And I did write about at the very onset of OTAs how this spring offseason program for him was going to be about testing his boundaries, figuring out what he can get away with, what he can't, being able to make mistakes, to learn from those mistakes. Because this is the time of year, especially for a young quarterback, when you want to be able to have the luxury of making those mistakes. And he did, 19 seconds left in the 2-minute drill on the 45-yard line. And he chunks it deep to Christian Watson, because that's what the situation calls for. He badly underthrew it. Jireh Alexander picks it off, heads the other way. But this is the time to do those things. You were at the third OTA, the very last rep. He throws the interception, the back of the end zone to Tyree Moore, who wasn't at minicamp, but he made a good play on the ball in the OTA period. This is the time to be making those kind of throws and to learn from what he can and cannot do. Now it's on him to not do that again, to learn from the mistakes. And what he said about the interception to Tyree Moore, was that an okay decision given the format, given it's the end of practice, or is that something you have to learn from? He was giving himself no grace there. He said that late over the middle is never good. You never want to do that. So he knows now. He's done that in June instead of in September, October, and now he needs to not repeat that. That's going to be the most important thing, is establishing those mistakes and then not repeating them.
I also think it's important to point out that both the interception that ended his practice last week in OTAs and then the interception that ended minicamp were against veteran DBs who know what they're doing, and he said of both of them, especially the Jireh one, he baited me into it. And so this is their job essentially right now, is to teach Jordan Love what he can and can't do.
And Jireh Alexander is going to take that very, very. I thought Wednesday was a fascinating test study for what Jireh Alexander can mean for this new quarterback and this young offense come training camp. Tuesday, Jireh Alexander was just basically floating on the field. He was everywhere. He was just having fun. It was not. He was not zeroed in, but it was very clear Wednesday he was zeroed in. He was talking trash to Romeo Dobbs. He was talking trash to Jordan Love at one point. When Jordan Love was getting into the huddle, I couldn't hear what he was saying, but Jordan Love kind of just shook his head. It was like, I can't hear a thing. Like he played it off, but he was taking that very seriously. He ends a 2-minute drill the way Jireh Alexander can, with an interception. And then in the locker room after, he comes up, puts his arm around Jordan Love in the middle of his gaggle with reporters and gives him some love and says, best quarterback in the league right here. And but don't try me, though. Don't try me, though. And he's going to make sure that come training camp, Jireh Alexander, very similar to Rashawn Gary, whenever he gets healthy, those are practice wreckers. They will wreck your practice. And Jireh Alexander is going to take that very seriously once they get the pads on. And that's going to be a great proving grounds, a lot of lessons for Jordan Love before it gets real, before the snaps start, being able to go against Jireh Alexander every day.
Beyond Jordan Love, even, I feel like we need to spend a minute on Danny Etling and Sean Clifford, because with Aaron Rodgers gone, everyone's spot on the totem pole moves. And so now you have right now Danny Etling as the backup to Jordan Love. And it's something to keep in mind, too, as we get into training camp and they start making roster cuts, is that there is a new rule this year where teams can have a third emergency quarterback on game day. However, that quarterback must be on the 53-man roster. So feasibly, we could see 3 quarterbacks make the 53. I mean, when was the last time you saw that on a team?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like, was it Jordan Love's rookie year? They might have had 3. I have to go back and check, but it's rare. I don't look. It's June. We haven't even started training camp yet. There's a long way to go. I'd be very surprised if they had 3 on the 53, because whether it's Danny Etling or Sean Clifford, you ought to be able to get one of them through the practice squad. I mean, the chances of that, not seeing what they do in the preseason, the chances of that should be very, very high. So you're not going to cost a 53 spot with a guy that you can get through to the practice squad. But that's going to be an interesting battle. And right now, if I had to tell you who's going to be quarterback 2, I don't know. I mean, obviously, they drafted Sean Clifford in the 5th round. They did not draft Danny Etling, but Danny Etling is a year ahead. He's a good athlete. We saw that last preseason with the runs that he was able to break off downfield. I mean, the guy is a good athlete. Either one of them, they should be able to get through the practice squad. But I don't know which one it is that they're going to keep on the 53.
Yeah, I agree, because they both, as you said, sort of present different factors. Danny Etling's more athletic. Sean Clifford picked up the playbook very quickly.
And he's so experienced. I mean, he played so much at Penn State. So he's got a lot of college snaps under his belt.
Right.
It should help him as a rookie.
And I almost wonder if this quarterback room is intentional. I mean, no big names other than Jordan Love. But, I mean, again, we've only seen him start a game in the NFL. No huge names. But Jordan Love talked about both Etling and Clifford yesterday and about how much they've helped him, because you have Danny Etling, who's been in the league for a few years now, and he's been with the Packers for a year now, so he knows this offense. And you have Sean Clifford, who technically, is older than Jordan Love, and as you said, tons of experience. And so I almost feel like this quarterback room is intentional to surround Jordan Love with as much help as possible. But with that being said, wouldn't you think a veteran quarterback could do that even better?
Well, what's interesting is that they never added a 4th quarterback. And I asked Matt LaFleur about that during OTAs. And the reason for that is because all 3 of them are so young. And, in the past they've had 4, but one of them was Aaron Rodgers, who wasn't taking off-season reps away. So it's a little different now. There's a finite amount of reps to go around, and all 3 of them need as many reps as they can get. Mm-hmm. So that's why they felt good with 3. Not having a veteran in that quarterback room. It is a bit of a surprise that they never did add a veteran. I know earlier in the offseason, Brian Gutekunst kind of hinted to the possibility and just never happened. They're going to go young there. You never know, as Brian Gutekunst always says, roster building is a 365-day-a-year job. So just because they don't have one now doesn't mean that at some point they might not call someone. But at this point in the calendar, your pickings are very slim. So most likely they're going to be very young at quarterback, not just on the top of the depth chart, but at backup. And from there, it's on Sean Clifford and Danny Etling. I mean, all eyes are going to be on Jordan Love for obvious reasons, but that's going to be a battle. That's going to be a competition to be QB2.
We got battles at QB2, battles at long snapper, just interesting battles all over the place here in Green Bay. Aside from Jordan Love, I think probably the most focus this offseason heading into the season will be on the wide receivers, because you want to talk about young. They are just like a kindergarten class out there. I couldn't think of a better example. I panicked. I went with kindergarten class. But you're looking out there and you have Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, and Samori Toure as your vets, essentially, and they're coming into their 2nd year. Granted, all 3 of those guys look infinitely more comfortable and confident than they did at this time last year. Christian Watson, especially, who wasn't even participating at this time last year. All of that being said, do you see, at least through minicamp, like there might be enough pieces there to build a productive wide receiver core? There's
no question that there's talent there. That they have talented youngsters, but they're also youngsters. And the idea that when your veterans are going into their 2nd season with a new quarterback, there might not be any growing pains, that's pretty delusional. There's going to be growing pains. You have your two top tight ends are going to be rookies. There's going to be growing pains throughout this season, and how they respond to those growing pains that's going to be as important as anything, because they're going to come. They're going to happen. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be wrong routes. There's going to be interceptions at the wrong time. There's going to be drops at the wrong time. How they respond to that is going to be everything. And, we got a good example of that last year with Christian Watson, for sure, because for the first half of his rookie year, anything that could go wrong went wrong. Mm-hmm. He had 2 separate injuries, not counting the concussion in Buffalo. He dropped his first pass, which would have been a guaranteed touchdown against Patrick Peterson. Everything that went wrong for Christian Watson, and he responds with 8 touchdowns in 4 games. So there's some real mental fortitude there that's important for a young guy breaking into this league. He's going to probably need more of that this fall, because he's, what happened to Davante Adams his second season? I'm not saying the same thing will happen to Christian Watson, but if you can have a receiver of the caliber of Davante Adams struggle as a second-year pro, it can happen to anybody. And that was with Aaron Rodgers. That was, not a first-time starting quarterback. So I think you're going to see a lot of stops and starts. I think you're going to see inconsistency. As much as they hammer home the importance of consistency, it's going to be a roller coaster. It's not going to be a straight linear line. And when those dips come, how do they respond to that? That's going to ultimately be what decides whether it's a successful season for this passing game.
Sophomore slump.
Yep.
It'll get you anybody. One of the connections that we have seen sort of like fortify itself over OTAs and minicamp is between Jordan Love and Romeo Dobbs, though. And it makes sense. Those two had last offseason to build that connection. They had during the season to build that connection when Christian Watson was sort of running with the ones a little bit more. And Dobbs would dip in and out kind of depending on who was hurt and available. But they've spent the past year building this connection. And it, again, no pads, no full speed for a lot of things. But it looks like that could be a connection to watch that could really pay off.
And to your point, that's what this young offense does have going for it. Is Jordan Love might be a first-time starting quarterback, but he's been here 3 years already. He's been around these guys. He's had a ton of OTA offseason reps because Aaron Rodgers wasn't here. It was Jordan Love's time of year in the spring program. Then last year, Aaron Rodgers breaks his thumb on his throwing hand, and for several weeks, Jordan Love is getting first-team reps on Wednesday, on Thursday. I mean, he's the guy running practice with these teammates that are now going to be surrounding him. It's the same thing at center. Josh Myers has had a ton of snaps in practice already with Jordan Love. It's one reason perhaps that you've seen no discernible job competition, no battle for center, because Josh Myers has been implanted. He's got a lot of familiarity with Jordan Love. Now, as far as Romeo Dobbs goes, the other thing that makes sense about it, not just the familiarity that they've already built up, but Romeo Dobbs is your bread and butter move the change receiver. Mm-hmm. His releases off the line of scrimmage, even going back to his rookie year, he's very natural with that. He's always shown an ability to get open. He works the intermediate underneath routes very, very well. That's very, very important for a young quarterback. And Jordan Love said it over and over again. He doesn't predetermine who he's going to throw to. He's very much emphasizing to himself, let the play progressions play out, see who's open. Romeo Dobbs gets open. Now, that's not to say that Christian Watson isn't an invaluable piece of this offense, because any NFL offense needs to have a big play receiver that can take the top off and reach the end zone from anywhere. That's what Christian Watson does.
But you also need a gritty receiver.
Yeah, that's for Christian Watson. That's his bread and butter. But Romeo Dobbs working the intermediate routes when you've got a guy on the other side that can take the top off an offense or a defense, that's very important, and it's good complementary football in the passing game. It wouldn't be surprising to me if Romeo Dobbs was their leading receiver at the end of this year in terms of at least catches and targets. And Christian Watson leads in yards and touchdowns. I mean, that's kind of the mold that both of those guys are in.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Maybe when we get into training camp, we'll place like over-under predictions.
Yeah.
Who do you think ends where? with that in mind, let's just round out this group real quick. It's interesting to say this about a 7th-round pick in his 7th year, but I think we see a lot of production from Samori Toure this year as well. Again, this is just through what we saw of him, flashes of his rookie year and through OTAs and minicamp, but he's running right there with Watson and Dobbs as the ones, unless they seem to sort of rotate Samori Toure and Jaden Reed in with those ones.
There's a rotation there right now for sure, and Samori Toure is more of a perimeter guy, but he's getting 1 reps. Jaden Reed is getting a lot of slot reps. How quickly he cements himself as a slot receiver be interesting, and it largely depend on the training camp that he has. But he's already getting a ton of first-string slot snaps already at this point in the offseason, just like Luke Musgrave's getting a lot of 1s, and he already looks like tight end 1 in June. So there's options there. One of the more surprising options, Kassidy, is Malik Heath has taken a ton of first-team reps, and he's an undrafted rookie out of Ole Miss, but you almost never see undrafted rookies running with the 1s in minicamp, but there he was. He was running with the 1s. So it looks like he might get an opportunity come training camp. Wasn't able to catch up with Malik Heath. It'd be very interesting to kind of determine, and I don't think Matt LaFleur was asked about him either, but it'd be very interesting to find out what he's doing right, because this time of year you pay attention to the reps, you pay attention to who's going with the 1s, who's going with the 2s, and it's not by accident. If you're going with the 1s, you're doing something right.
Last week during the OTAs, the final OTA, Malik Heath had 2 of the most impressive catches of the day. It was sideline catch, turned his body, got it, stayed in bounds, just textbook stuff. And so, I'm glad you brought him up. He'll definitely be an interesting to watch as we get into training camp as well. You remember last year training camp, that's where everyone sort of figured out that Romeo Dobbs could be more to this offense than we thought originally.
Yeah, I mean, right at the gun, right when they started, he was making plays every single day down the field. Who's going to be that guy this year?
Yeah.
That's going to be really interesting. Do you have a prediction for that?
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but Malik Heath could really be it. I also, just because they're so thin, they have the talent, but depth-wise, they're so thin at receiver. I'm going to say it. I'm going out there. I wouldn't be shocked. I'd be slightly surprised, but I wouldn't be overtly shocked if Jeff Cotton made the roster or was at least a practice squad guy that they elevated for a couple of games.
He's your dark horse candidate.
He's my dark horse because he gets downfield. He gets open downfield. I'm
going to take a slightly different tact, but to me, the rookie that comes in and just makes plays off the bat, I'll take Luke Musgrave. I mean, the work he's done already in this offseason program, the way he's built, he's so dang tall. Yeah. He's got great length, good wide frame. And Jordan Love said yesterday he's faster than any of us thought, which is something because he came in running a 4.61. So everyone knew on paper that he was fast. Apparently, he's even faster on the field. Once they get the pads on, he's a guy I'll be looking at and expecting some big plays from. And to a lesser extent, but still, I mean, how quickly does Tucker Kraft start making plays? Because he's another guy that's built very impressively. If there was no Luke Musgrave, everyone would be kind of eye-popping at how Tucker Kraft is built because he looks like an NFL tight end. The two of them, and right now, not surprised because Luke Musgrave is a second-round pick and Tucker Kraft was a third-round pick. So it's not a surprise that Luke Musgrave is ahead of Tucker Kraft. But the two of them together, however long it takes for Tucker Kraft to come on as a rookie, you've got 2 tight ends there that they have not had a lot of players at that position that have been built like that over the last decade. I mean, really since Jermichael Finley, they've not had young guys built like that, who look like they're all encompassing tight ends. They can make plays in the passing game, can block. But I think Luke Musgrave would be my pick. I think he'll come in guns a-blazing for camp.
Luke Musgrave is kind of an enigma to me. And when we get into camp, I want to see how consistent he is from 1 week to the next. Because the first OTAs, he looked a little overwhelmed, but that's understandable. Everyone would be overwhelmed that first OTA. Second week of OTAs, he killed it. Everyone was talking about him. That's what Matt LaFleur said. Like, yeah, he's him or that guy. I can't remember exactly what he said.
He is different.
He's different. Thank you. The last week of OTAs, he struggled. He dropped 4 out of the 5 targets that came his way. And then he gets into minicamp and he's making plays everywhere again. And so I think a lot of that has to do with him being a rookie, but they're going to rely on him this year. So can he get into camp and figure out how to carry it over from one day to the next, 1 week to the next?
With the pads on. Once the pads come off. Because that's when you get to see who shows up. This is all classroom work on the field. I mean, like we said, it was heavy walkthrough all throughout. They didn't go live either of the 2 days. It was all walkthrough, jog through. Once they get the pads on, they're going to be going hard, and that's when you see who shows up, who's ready to make plays, just like Romeo Dobbs did last year. When they get the pads on, and he was making downfield catches, tightly contested catches all throughout. That's when you knew, okay, Romeo Dobbs has something. He's going to be a player, and he was. We'll see who that is, but I think Luke Musgrave's entire physical body of work, I mean, his size, his speed, his length, which is very impressive. He's the type of tight end. I'm sure that when the intensity ratchets it up, he's going to be swimming mentally a bit as a rookie. But he's the type of tight end that's built like you can go make plays now.
Mm-hmm. He looks like he was made in a lab to be an NFL tight end.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's switch to defense, but actually, let's not. You and I talked about this yesterday, that one of the more interesting inter-squad rivalries that we are like getting excited to watch is Romeo Dobbs and Jireh Alexander. Because, we saw last year in training camp, as we both mentioned today, Romeo Dobbs came into training camp and just sort of blew us all away. And then Jireh Alexander came out one day and said, let me have him. Mm-hmm. Like, I want him today. And he humbled him a little bit, but it made him better. Throughout the year, they were always in each other's ear, but in like a support way. Jireh Alexander would give Romeo Dobbs a tough day in practice, and then he'd be in his locker afterwards telling him, this is what I saw, this is what we could do. Now you're seeing Romeo Dobbs come out of his shell a little bit more. Jireh Alexander, as you said, was sort of jawing at him on Wednesday, and Romeo Dobbs just like waved him off and was like, oh, I don't even hear you, like just kind of waved him off. All of that being said, that's going to be one of the more interesting matchups for me to watch in training camp. Which one are you most looking forward to based off minicamp so far?
Yeah, you could say Romeo Dobbs or Jireh Alexander gets anyone, because if Christian Watson starts having a day, Jireh Alexander just mosey on over to Christian Watson and try to take him out of practice. If it's Samori Torrey on a day, or if it's Jaden Reed, heaven forbid the rookie slot receiver starts going off, you might see Jireh Alexander in the slot. I know it's Keyshawn Nixon in the slot, and it's going to be Keyshawn Nixon in the slot, but you might, if Jaden Reed starts going off, you might see Jireh Alexander in the slot a bit more. Whoever he decides on a day-to-day basis, I got that guy. That'll be fun to watch. But as far as battles go, it's not offense versus defense, but right tackle. Right tackle is going to be fascinating. It's very clear right now that Josh Nijman and Zach Tom are in a rotation at right tackle. They are locked in a competition to be the starting right tackle. The Packers paid Josh Nijman some $4 million with the second-round tender to be not just potentially their starting right tackle, but also obviously left tackle insurance if David Bakhtiari misses a game or if something happens. They feel like David Bakhtiari's knee is stabilized. David Bakhtiari feels like that too. He went through the entire offseason this year without having a surgery, which is the first time that's happened.
More than you could say for recent years.
Yeah. I mean, he's come out of it, but you never know when, it might happen. You might need some insurance at left tackle. Josh Nijman provides that. But with Zach Tom, he's just, if they put their best 5 out there, I don't know how Zach Tom's not part of their best 5. He almost just seems like a guy you've got to get on the field. And he can be a very valuable piece to that offensive line as the jack of all trades, 6 offensive linemen. We saw Zach Tom take quite a bit of center reps behind Josh Myers in the minicamp period. And if, Josh Myers is going to be the starting center unless something unforeseen happens. It just, there's no real semblance of a competitive position battle at center. But if Josh Myers played only 6 games his rookie year, started all 17 last year. If they need a backup center, it's probably Zach Tom. He can play both guard spots. He can play left tackle because when David Bakhtiari missed week 7 last year in Washington, it was Zach Tom starting left tackle. He played pretty well there. And he's in the competition right now in the running for starting right tackle. So he's kind of like your new Elton Jenkins. The Packers, you saw them this offseason kind of acknowledge that Elton Jenkins is at his best at left guard. I don't think you're going to see Elton Jenkins moving around the offensive line a lot like he did early in his career because he's a Pro Bowl to All-Pro left guard. He's one of the best left guards in the league. Now Zach Tom kind of wears that hat where he can play all 5 positions anywhere that's needed, and yet he's also one of their best 5 offensive linemen. So I think right tackle is going to be fascinating to see how that plays out. I think there's a long way to go. I think it's very, very open to either candidate. And training camp's really going to determine who's your right tackle come week 1 against Chicago.
Yes, that's a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up too. And as you mentioned earlier, it seems for as much talk as there was about competition at center at the beginning of OTAs, Josh Myers has pretty much taken that role back. Is safe to say?
Yeah, he struggled last year. And what Josh Myers definitely doesn't have going for him is that he was the 62nd, math is hard.
Good thing you don't have to work in words.
I know, right? Well, you introduce the numbers. The words I'm okay with, but whenever numbers come into the equation, my head kind of gets the fritz. He was the 62nd overall pick. What he doesn't have going for him was the 63rd overall pick in the same draft was Creed Humphrey. So when you're picked ahead of the guy who's become the best young center in the league for the Kansas City Chiefs, the 2nd-team All-Pro last year, looks like he's going to be a perennial All-Pro. That's tough. That's a tough comparison. Josh Myers is 6'5". He's got great mobility. One of the things he did very well last year is get to the second level. Anytime they had him pull from the center spot, he was tremendous mobility for his size. He has the package that you want to be able to dominate the interior of the offensive line. He just didn't. He didn't. And Creed Humphrey has established himself as this potential perennial All-Pro. Josh Myers has a long way to go. But there was no semblance of a competition for his job this offseason. I don't suspect that that's going to change in training camp. So, yes, it looks like Josh Myers is going to be the starting center, which means Zach Tom's not going to be the starting center. Where does he fit in is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, definitely one to watch as well. Let's switch to the defense. As we said, Keyshawn Nixon is the slot. Rasul Douglas, Jireh Alexander are the outside corners. I asked Jair about that this week because I was like, last year you were openly campaigning to be the slot corner. So was Rasul. Y'all were both fighting for it. Now it seems pretty set on paper that it's going to be Keyshawn. Like, are you okay with just giving that up? And he's like, yeah, he's pretty good there. That needs to be his spot. But he's like, I might push him for it every now and then. So, we could still see possibly some rotation if Jair gets his way. But that trio seems set. As someone who has watched this team for the past few years, when was the last time going into training camp already you felt like 2 outside corners, nickel corner, that trio was already set and established?
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite to this level when they had Sam Shields and Casey Hayward and Micah Hyde, but it feels a little similar to that. Obviously, Micah Hyde was the slot corner. I think that was circa 2015. And then they started to lose those guys, and they had Demarius Randall and Quentin Rollins. They kind of had his opportunity as a 2nd-round pick, and then they went to Kevin King. And it's been there's a reason why. If you look at the Packers draft history over the past decade, it's not just a lot of defensive players in the first round; it's a lot of DBs. They've had a lot of DBs in the first round, and it's been a revolving door there. What's going to be interesting there, what we don't know, I mean, we say it's set, and everyone loves Keyshawn Nixon. I mean, in that locker room, he won a lot of brownie points with his returns last year. The way that he came in and upgraded special teams overnight in a way that just hasn't been done in these parts in recent memory, that got a lot of attention. It got a lot of accolades for a good reason. And then the way he attacks every snap, I mean, that's the thing with Keyshawn Nixon. When he did get defensive snaps, he attacked it. Yeah. He was not a liability. He had a tremendous day week 3 in Tampa. He had the game-sealing interception against Justin Fields in Chicago late in the season. He made plays in his few snaps, and he never takes a play off. So there's every good reason why he's the slot guy right now. But when Eric Stokes comes back, where does he go? He was a first-round pick 2 years ago, and he had a really good rookie year. There's a lot of upside there. There's a lot of proven talent there. But then last year happened, and I'm not just talking about the injury, obviously. The first half of the season, he really, really struggled. He struggled in man. He struggled in zone. He did not tackle. Those are pretty important 3 elements of playing cornerback in the NFL. Where does he fit in? Because he's got something to prove now, and he's got the talent to do it. You've really got four players for 3 spots, and the top 3 players that we know about are obviously Jireh Alexander, Rasul Douglas. They're good. They're on the perimeter.
Right.
Keyshawn Nixon is the one that is getting the opportunity. Eric Stokes is not a slot. How do they figure that out? That makeshift revolving door. I don't know. And we also don't know when Eric Stokes is going to be back on the field. Matt LaFleur was hopeful that Eric Stokes could take individual reps in minicamp, and that did not happen. So that's going to delay his introductory to team reps come training camp, because he's going to have to take individual reps before he can get on the field and team. When does he get on the field? When does he start getting a crack at it? That could determine as much as anything. But over the course of this season, how Eric Stokes factors into the secondary, I don't know anyone knows right now.
Maybe not even Eric Stokes. And he talked to us at OTAs about last year, even pre-injury, knowing that he struggled, and what that did for his mindset, and especially his mindset in recovery. Like, okay, I'm not only recovering, I have to bounce back from a lackluster year. He said a lot about, focusing too much on everything instead of his job. And that can get a young guy. Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. You start thinking you have to take more on when you really don't. And so will be interesting to see what he looks like when he does come back. His injury, as we know, was so much worse than we originally thought. The Liz Frank injury in his foot really being what caused a lot of time and trouble in recovery. But he has been in the rehab group at practices. So he's at least back out there, which is more than we could say for a while. At one point last year, he was in a wheelchair. Yeah. And so it's been a long road, but he's getting there. With Keyshawn Nixon, as you said, he's everywhere. And Ryan, he's just like always he's just where the ball is. Like wherever the ball is, there's Keyshawn. Mm-hmm. And he goes 100% every single play. They were practicing kick returns on Tuesday. They're supposed to be going half speed. Everyone else is going half speed. Keyshawn Nixon gets into where all the defenders are, lowers his shoulder, knocks over a teammate, and then gets a burst of speed to keep going down the rest of the field. Coach had to yell at him. But, that's just Keyshawn Nixon. How exciting could that be to see him in slot when he's had a whole offseason to work there?
Yeah, I mean, Keyshawn Nixon only knows one speed.
Right.
Keyshawn Nixon speed. He goes the same speed all the time. It's one speed. So not at all surprised. And that's as much as you don't want to knock a teammate to the ground. The number one rule this time of year in practice, the number one practice rule is do not knock teammates to the ground. Stay off the ground. So not good, but it's also endearing to his coaches because they know he's going to show up every play.
Yeah.
if you just take the sample size he showed last year and you extrapolate it out over 800 snaps instead of 300 snaps,
right,
he's a quality slot corner because he played well. He was a really, really solid in a part-time role in the slot last year. But it doesn't work like that. When you go from 300 to 800 snaps, you're introducing a whole lot more variables to have screw-ups, to get beat. It's an entirely different animal than just playing your 300 snaps in the part-time role. So how he handles that increase, if that is what happens, that we don't know. You don't know with any player when you go from a part-time to full-time player, especially at corner where you never leave the field.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know how any guy's going to handle that.
Let's move up to the front seven, shall we? Well, you're looking at a defensive line that, and I know we talked about this at the first podcast we did after the first 2 OTAs, but it became even more clear through minicamp that that's going to be a young interior line. Again, shocker, it's the story of this team. One day this week, I looked out there, and I want to say it was Preston Smith, Kenny Clark, TJ Slayton, Devontae Wyatt, and then Justin Hollins, who will be Rashawn Gary. Does that feel like
or
it's
Lucas Van Ness? We'll see.
Or Lucas Van Ness. I almost see him more as like a hybrid guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of lump him into just wherever they need him in that front seven. That being said, especially on the interior, I mean, it's going to be TJ Slayton, Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt. Does that feel safe to say?
Yeah, I mean, Kenny Clark's your top guy, and Devontae Wyatt's probably going to be your interior rusher next to Kenny Clark and nickel when they only go 2 down linemen. TJ Slayton is going to be your stereotypical nose, your early downs, your run defender on the interior of the defensive line. I think a big question there is how quickly Colby Wooden starts getting snaps, because we've already seen him starting to rotate in with the ones. They don't have the luxury with Colby Wooden that they had a year ago with Devontae Wyatt. Devontae Wyatt took 3/4 of his rookie season to learn, to grow, to marinate, basically, because they had Jerron Reed, they had Dean Lowry, and they also had TJ Slayton, Kenny Clark. Mm-hmm. Devontae Wyatt was the 5 last year. He's 5th on the depth chart. Colby Wooden is going to be the 4th. And what they like about Colby Wooden is he has some pass rush potential on the interior. So from a pass rush standpoint, he might be your 3rd, because TJ Slayton, again, is that early down run defender that hasn't shown. I mean, he's the type of defensive lineman every team needs on its roster, because he eats up blocks and makes things easy for the linebackers behind him. Doesn't exactly get a lot of interior pass rush. So Colby Wooden, it might be on the faster track, even as a 4th-round pick, than Devontae Wyatt was last year, just because of how the depth chart shakes out. It's much thinner this year than it was a year ago. As far as the edge goes, Justin Hollins probably not going to be a starter for much this season, but it's not a coincidence. I mean, people look at Justin Hollins like, oh, he's getting 1 reps. The way he came in late November after getting claimed from the Rams, he was a player. He made plays. And at the very least, he is a better depth piece than the Packers have had at that position for a long time. Like, he's a guy that's played in this league. He's a guy that came in and made plays last year. At the edge, you need a rotation. You want to be able to rotate at least 3 and probably 4 edge rushers at a time, and he factors into that rotation. Lucas Van Ness is, as Brian Gutekunst said, kind of your Zadarius Smith type. I mean, he's going to rush from the interior a lot. When Rashawn Gary comes back, I think you're going to see some 3 outside linebacker pass rushes on passing downs. You're going to have Lucas Van Ness on the interior rushing from a 5 tech. You're going to have Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith on the edge. And that's a great luxury for any defense. When you put that much quick twitch talent on the field and have them go after the passer, that's a benefit that not every team has. Until then, Lucas Van Ness is probably going to play mostly on the edge. I mean, he's transitioning there. He played a lot of 5 tech with his hand in the ground at Iowa. Played all over. He played some defensive tackle at Iowa, but he's transitioning to the edge, standing up. But yeah, over the long course, especially when Rashawn Gary comes back, you're going to see him all over that defensive line.
Have we talked about on this podcast, remind me, about Tyree Carpenter moving up to linebacker?
I don't think so.
I don't think we have. Let's tell the people about that, Ryan. Tyree Carpenter has officially made the move from safety to linebacker. It's on the roster and everything. When he was drafted last year, they mentioned seeing him as possibly, an in-the-box safety or someone that could cheat up and play close to the line. Was this just a natural move?
Yeah, I think the writing was kind of always on the wall. I remember the first time last year for rookie orientation when we first met Tyree Carpenter, and he just looked like a linebacker. Now, here's what Tyree Carpenter is. He's a special teamer, and he's a good special teamer. He's a quality special teamer. That is his ticket to the 53. That's the reason why he's likely to be on the 53. So long as he can continue giving special teams value, it doesn't so much matter whether he's a safety or a linebacker. He's going to play special teams. He's not going to see the field much on defense. But it also might show you a little bit what they think about the three options that they have at safety with Tarvarius Moore, Jonathan Owens, and Rudy Ford, who's the incumbent and was taking most of the first-team reps during the offseason program next to Darnell Savage. One of your starting safeties next to Savage is likely to come from those three. Mm-hmm. And so when you know that, you can go ahead and move Tyree Carpenter into the box and make him a linebacker. But again, he's going to be one of the core special teams players he was last year, and that's his passageway.
Last week, it was Tarvarius Moore that was running next to Darnell Savage. This week, it was Rudy Ford. Of course, Tarvarius Moore was not here at minicamp. So, yes, we'll continue to watch who that will be next to Darnell Savage. Darnell Savage, of course, had a down year last year as well before bouncing back in that Vikings game. They put up performers of the week when we were in the locker room, and Darnell Savage was up there pretty consistently. So at least the coaches think so far he's been maybe a little bit back to his old self. We'll have to see a little bit more, though, when the pads come back on. Do you have anything else on defense before I switch to special teams?
No, I think we covered it.
Let's go to special teams. We've already talked about returner ad nauseum. That's going to be Keyshawn Nixon, and then some variation of Jaden Reed, maybe Romeo Dobbs helping on the punt return as well.
Or maybe Keyshawn Nixon.
Dobbs. Yesterday, when they were practicing punt returns, Jaden Reed went to catch it, and Keyshawn Nixon came up behind him and swiped it out of his hands. I was like, I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen in a game, Keyshawn. He doesn't need to be prepared for that.
Yeah, he said that he's okay with Jaden Reed taking his punt return job, but he ain't going to make it easy.
No, exactly. And that's what cracks me up, too, because he's like, punt return is not really my thing. I'm better at kick returner. I don't know if he can earn it. Essentially, he said if Jaden Reed can earn it, he can take punt returners. This is coming from the guy who led the league in punt returns, too.
And the guy who, through the first 10 weeks of last year, went to Lambeau Field every day, reported for work, asking Matt LaFleur, let me take punt returns.
Yes, exactly.
That's one of those things that's really easy to say in June. Like, yeah, okay, Jaden Reed, I still got kickoff return. He can have some punt returns. When September comes, we'll see how Keyshawn Nixon feels about that.
We already know he's openly campaigning to get a play on offense, too. And you know what? Call me crazy, Ryan. I think by the end of the year, he'll have convinced Matt LaFleur to do it. We will see Keyshawn Nixon in a play on offense.
That'd be fun. The thing that Matt LaFleur said about that is that he wants Keyshawn Nixon to, because, he's also the guy going from 300 snaps to potentially 800 snaps. Right. He wants to see him be the master of the trade that he's on the roster to fill before they start getting creative with Keyshawn Nixon. But if he does, they could get awfully creative with Keyshawn Nixon.
I'm going to believe in him until he gives me a reason not to. And so, anyways, we got distracted. When it comes to kickers, this is, with Mason Crosby now gone, this is Anders Carlson's job to take. From what we saw during minicamp, and I want to get your opinion, he seemed to have the leg. He had the distance. The accuracy still needs some tweaking.
He made 11 of 12.
On yesterday?
Over the 2 days.
I thought I had him missing 2 yesterday.
He had all 6 yesterday. He was 5 for 6. I think he missed from 44 yards inside the Don Hudson Center. But yeah, I mean, he was the thing you said though. He's got a ton of leg.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a ton of leg. It was in the Don Hudson Center. Okay, so it's indoors. It's not in the elements. Certainly not in front of a packed stadium. But he made a 54-yard field goal with like 10 yards to spare.
Yeah.
Very high up on the uprights.
Right. Maybe that's why one of them yesterday looked a little off to me because it was so high up. I was like trying to imagine if the uprights kept going, if it would have been good or not.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, we knew even when he was drafted that the accuracy was the only like real concern. Some of that was when he was working with a brace. Is that easier to fix? Like, would you rather them have the leg and fix the accuracy than vice versa?
Well, certainly there's going to be much bigger tests coming up for the rookie kicker than a couple minicamp practices when it's closed off to the public and it's no one's really watching. But he had a good, and we've only seen him kick twice. The media, we don't know how else he's been kicking behind closed doors when it's not been an open practice. So let's have that caveat because it's a very small sample size. But from having that small sample size, he looked good. He looked like he was not only just a big, powerful leg, but also healthy, which is then his biggest. He had the torn ACL in his plant leg. He had the shoulder injury. He hasn't been healthy during a lot of his time at Auburn. He looks healthy. And when he's healthy, as Rich Bisaccia has said, he can kick the ball a long, long way, and he did that. What we were saying about the rookies having growing pains, it's going to be that way for a rookie kicker, and no one knows that better than Anders Carlson's older brother, Daniel Carlson, who got released like right off the gate after a bad game as a 5th-round pick with the Minnesota Vikings his rookie year, and boom, you have to start your career all over before it even gets off the ground. And he's done that, and he was an All-Pro last year. So and this is another thing Rich Bisaccia has said from a mental makeup. He comes from a family that's proven that they can do that. That's the most impressive thing Mason Crosby did in his career with the Packers. Wasn't figuring out the Rubik's Cube of Lambeau Field. As impressive as that is, as difficult and challenging as that is for any kicker. I remember Mason Crosby telling me about a story once when the Colts came. I think it was in 2016. And in pregame warmups, Adam Vinatieri came up to him and was like, "You have to kick here all the time." Adam Vinatieri, the greatest kicker who's ever lived, found Lambeau Field to be tricky. It is a very difficult place, but that's not as impressive as that is. The greatest thing that Mason Crosby ever did, when he had his slumps, he came back strong.
Yeah.
2012, a couple years ago when he had another kind of repeat of 2012. There were slumps in Mason Crosby's career, but he always came back strong. That's going to ultimately be the test for any kicker, but especially for Anders Carlson kicking in Lambeau Field. When those slumps happen, especially as a rookie, when you miss a big kick, how do you come back? How are you able to mentally process that and move forward? That's going to be the real test for him. Yeah.
And to your point about Daniel Carlson making a comeback, he did that thanks in no large part to Rich Bisaccia.
Yep.
So Anders Carlson seems to be in good hands. As we said, the guys are now taking a break, so will we. We're recording this on a Thursday. The players are still here, but for an off-the-field team activity, and then they will head home for the most part, except for Jireh Alexander, who said he likes to stay in Green Bay when no one else is here. Said he can go out to the Lambeau Field anytime he wants and it's quiet. But then he said, but I don't want people to come and look for me, so maybe I'll just go to New York. But that seems to be what every Packer player is doing these days.
Yeah, you got a lot of company out there.
Exactly. He's got his friends there. He said he has to get out there to see Adrian Amos anyways because he still has to exchange a Christmas present with him. Like, you realize it's June. It's June.
Hey, Christmas in July.
Christmas. Anyways, we're going to take a little bit of break as well. There will still be content on PackersNews.com coming over the next few weeks as we wrap up minicamp. This is baseball time, so y'all make sure to follow our colleagues Todd and Kurt as they continue to follow the Brewers for better or for worse right now. With that being said, Ryan, I'm going to give you your final 60 seconds. Something tells me you're not going to want to talk about the Mets today.
Who? I don't know what you mean. It's baseball season? Hey, big walk-off win last night in the Subway Series. I might have had a forceful reaction to that.
Oh, wait, that went into extra innings, didn't it?
It did. It sure did. The Mets have hit rock bottom. From the ashes, they now will rise like a phoenix. Like a phoenix all the way to the pennant. Yeah, I can't tell you how little I believe that right now.
No.
But you can hope.
Do what?
I said, but you can hope.
It's the hope that'll kill you.
I know. Oh, yeah, you tell a Mets fan that every year. Oh, you had to bring up the Mets. I was doing so good. I was cruising into my summer.
That's this time of year. I love this time of year when all the top plays, like when SportsCenter does their top 10 plays of the day, and it's just some variation of 6-4-3 double plays, like one right after the other.
Mm-hmm. And they're all against the Mets. It's amazing how that happens.
Look at how that works out. Do you have any summer plans?
I'll probably spend some time in Door County. Just obviously, Father's Day is coming up. My kids. Going down to see my folks live in southern Indiana. They're on a lake, nice retirement home on a lake house. Always spend a week down there the 4th of July. But really, it's just R&R season. I have to be like so bored from watching the paint dry that I'm like itching to do something, and then boom, training camp starts and it's 0 to 100.
Yeah,
and you love every second of it because you're ready to go. But this is the time to kind of unwind. What about you?
Not too many plans. I have some family coming into town next week, so that'll be fun. We'll take them up to Door County.
There you go.
I'm heading to St. Augustine at the end of the month. My friend Nick is getting married, so very excited to go see that. And then just kind of relaxing for the next few weeks until training camp starts. This is the time of year where I get really into puzzles, and I like to clear off my coffee table and see how long I can do it before it drives me crazy. But I always finish it.
I do not have the patience for a puzzle. I applaud you on that pursuit. I look at the pieces. I want it to come together. Like, I do not have the patience for that.
I love a good puzzle. I may go to Barnes & Noble today and see if I can find me a new puzzle.
Where are you taking the family, or what stops are you going to make Door County? What are the Door County essentials for you? Here's
my Door County bucket list. And let me put a caveat on this. I don't like cherries. And
it's tough in Door County.
There's a lot of Door County I can't do because I can't stand cherries. It tastes like medicine.
I understand. I don't like fruit in general. Not a fan. Vegetables are cool. Me and fruit don't get along.
They're so good. Like some watermelon, cantaloupe.
Watermelon's okay. Cantaloupe, not so much.
Yeah. Anyways, I like to go to Bailey's Harbor. There's a really good boat tour out of Bailey's Harbor that takes you through the shipwrecks that are in the lake and see some of the lighthouses. So we'll probably do that. Like to go up to Sister Bay. Like to go to Al Johnson's just for, it's a fun experience. Shout out AJ Dillon for telling me about that one. And then really like to go. There's a place in this little town called Ephraim where you come around the curve, and it's a place called Wilson's. They have some pretty good ice cream. Go up to Fish Creek. I think Fish Creek is the cutest town in Door County, in my opinion.
Okay.
I just like to get out and walk around in there. They have cute little shops, cute little coffee shops. It's on the water, but it's in like a cove. And so that's probably my favorite town to just kind of walk around in. And there's also an alpaca store in Fish Creek, and sometimes there's an alpaca in the front yard of the alpaca store.
What I got from that was ice cream. Ice cream is much better than fruit.
Go to Wilson's in Ephraim.
There you go. I badly want to. I think I want to knock this one off this summer. I badly want to kayak Cape Point.
I did that with a colleague of ours, Adriana Torres, last summer, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I will say this. Do it in a one-person boat. They put us in a two-person boat, and nothing has ever tested our friendship quite like that.
Nope. There's only enough room in a kayak for me.
Yeah, that was an interesting study of a relationship when you put two people in a kayak together.
I retract that. I have kayaked in a 2-seater with my kids, but they don't really paddle. So
Right.
I can do, but otherwise, no, I'm not co-opting with another adult in a kayak.
Yeah, that'll test a relationship for sure. Well, Ryan, enjoy your summer. I'll see you July 26th.
It's coming up faster than
I'm sure we'll talk. We'll see. We'll talk before then. But yes, as we said, July 26th is the first training camp practice. Presumably, that's what Matt LaFleur said yesterday. TB subject to change as always, but it should be July 26th. First several practices. Actually, all training camp practices are open to the public, correct?
That's right.
So, yeah, make sure you mark your calendars for that if you want to be in Green Bay. Hopefully the construction will be done by then. God willing and the creek don't rise. So, anyways, Ryan, thank you as always. We'll see y'all in July. Oh, and this has been the Green 19 podcast from JSNPackersNews.com.
It's summer.
Green 19. Green 19. Set. Green 19. Set.